Hi guys, so it's looking more and more likely at the time of recording this video that the SNP and the Greens pro-independence parties are going to win a majority in the Scottish elections. Now, the response from the UK government has been, well, typical. They've been basically saying now is not the time for a referendum, even though the SNP have not said when they're going to hold a referendum. The response, of course, is, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We should be focusing on recovery, not on a divisive referendum. Just think for a moment. Let's have a hypothetical. George Eustice, on the screen here, Environment Secretary, used to be a member of UKIP. Imagine if today the UK was a member of the European Union and UKIP won a majority in the House of Commons. And part of their manifesto is to hold a referendum to leave the European Union. And the European Union said, now is not the time. We're in the middle of a pandemic. You shouldn't be holding a divisive referendum. Do you think, for one moment, George Eustice's response and UKIP's response to that would be, yes, you're right, European Union. Now is not the time. We should focus on recovering from the pandemic. We should focus on, working together. And a referendum on Brexit would be divisive. Do you think for one moment that Brexiteers would support that position? Of course they would not. But the UK government wants the Scots to support that position. Let's hear from George Eustice.
Let's talk about Scotland. Where do you stand on the possibility of a second referendum? Still results are coming in, but what is the position of the government on that?
Well, look, we had a referendum in Scotland just about 5 years ago. There was a result there. I just think
This is the typical response. We had a referendum 5 years ago. As a Brexiteer, of course, he's ignoring the elephant in the room. The Scots were lied to because they were told that if you vote to leave the UK, you'll have to leave the European Union. So don't vote to leave the UK. And then what happened 2 years later? The UK as a whole left and the Scottish people voted to remain in the European Union. So people like George Eustice lied to the people of Scotland in order to convince them to remain in the UK, and then convinced the rest of the UK to leave the European Union. And the Scots said, no, we don't want to leave the European Union. But the response from the UK government was, we don't give a crap. And now they're suggesting, no, you need to stay in the Union because you had a referendum some years ago, even though we lied to you in order to convince you to vote a particular way in that referendum.
we try to come out of this pandemic and as we focus on the economic recovery as we come out of it, it really isn't the time to do constitutional
Nobody's talking about having the referendum today or tomorrow. It takes time to put in place the measures to have a referendum. There has to be debate. There has to be consultation. Both sides need to present their arguments. That takes time. Nobody's talking about having a referendum today, but that's the response from the UK government. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah, but the pandemic is going to run its course. Yes, the pandemic is not going to finish today or tomorrow. It could be a year from now. But that's not an excuse to tell the Scottish people, okay, you voted for a manifesto. We don't give a crap about that manifesto.
Tinkering and have another divisive referendum. I just don't think that is what people want, and the government's very clear that we've had a referendum and now is not the time to have another one.
Basically he's saying, Scotland, shut the F up. We tell you what to do. We decide whether you have a referendum or not.
But if the SNP win a majority, would you grant them that privilege of holding another referendum? Well,
look, it's something that the UK Parliament is the only one that can actually grant a referendum. That's always been the case. We've had one recently, so they've had their referendum. It was described.
Once again, he's ignoring the elephant in the room of Brexit. We have it recently. Well, it's not all that. It depends on your point of view when it comes to what recently means. But the difference is the difference is Brexit. It's not that nothing really changed between 2014 and 2021, there has been massive change because of Brexit. And the fact that Scotland voted to remain in the European Union. Like, an argument could be somewhat made. I don't think it's the case, but an argument could be made that if Scotland as a whole had voted to leave the European Union back in 2016, then you could sort of say, yes, but nothing has really changed because, you know, we told the people I can't even defend that position.
As a once-in-a-generation referendum, we really don't think there's a case for another one, particularly as we try to come out of this pandemic and focus on the issue of getting economic recovery going and getting back in the saddle as a country as we come out of this difficult pandemic.
The Prime Minister has said, been quoted, I think, in the Telegraph today, saying it would be irresponsible. But would the government...
Boris Johnson talking about something being irresponsible. Boris Johnson, who forced his own government and his party to vote to restrict his negotiating team, to restrict Parliament from extending the transition period, the Brexit transition period, in order to get a better deal. Boris Johnson is talking about being irresponsible. Boris Johnson, who said when it came to the pandemic, you just need to take it on the chin. Boris Johnson talking about being irresponsible.
Be prepared to go to court to actually block it? Would the government go that far?
Well, look, I'm not going to sort of get into these sort of hypothetical questions. We still don't have the full results in Scotland. I know there's speculation about what might happen. The government's got a very clear position that we just don't think now's the time for another referendum. We've had one recently. We've got more important things that we should all be focusing on, and that's our position.
It's interesting that he hasn't said we're going to fight it in the courts, because I think they're holding out, hoping that they're able to fight it politically first. There's a two-tier approach here. One is to fight it politically, and then one is to fight it legally. So I think at the moment the Tories are trying to fight it politically. Now let's hear from the SNP how they take to George Eustice's response.
What's your reaction to George Eustice saying on this programme that there isn't a case for another referendum?
George Eustice can say whatever he likes, but it doesn't change the fact that this week the people of Scotland are putting their trust in the SNP and in pro-independence parties.
Look, if a party has it as part of its manifesto to do something, it doesn't have to be... Let's just park independence for a moment. Let's say a party wins power, and part of their manifesto is to spend more on the environment. If they want to spend more money or invest in protecting the environment, then they should be doing that. There shouldn't be someone else trying to stop them, because that is how democracy works. What the UK government is trying to do is to try and stop democracy, impede democracy. The people of Scotland voted this way. Whether you like it or not, the people of Scotland voted for pro-independence parties. Look, I've said before, I think Brexit was a mistake. I think it was wrong for the UK to leave. But it was, in a sense, the democratic right of the British people to vote to leave the European Union. I think the approach to all of it was completely wrong. I think it's extremely damaging. But if it was the will of the people, how can Brexiteers turn around now and say, well, we don't care about the people of Scotland. It's not the will of the people of Scotland to be independent. Complete hypocrisy when it comes to Brexit and Brexiteers.
That mandate cannot be ignored, and no politician can stand in the way of the democratic wishes of the people of Scotland. It's not for me or for any other politician to tell the people of Scotland what they do or do not want. And at the end of the day, I understand George Eustice and I may not agree on whether or not Scotland should be independent, but actually that doesn't matter. What matters is giving the people of Scotland that choice to tell us what they think.
Once again, it's about the people of Scotland should be given the referendum. It's not about leaving or remaining. It's about having the choice. The SNP said the people of Scotland should have a choice. It doesn't mean that as soon as they have a choice, that means Scotland is leaving. The argument has to be made. It's the responsibility of the pro-independence parties, being at the moment the SNP and the Greens in the Scottish Parliament, making the argument to leave. But first there has to be the choice. What the UK government want is to stop the Scottish people even having a choice. They don't care about actually defending the union. They care more about not allowing the Scottish people to even decide whether they want to stay or want to leave. It's a bit like my argument before. If the European Union said, no, we're not actually going to allow you the choice of remaining in the European Union or leaving the European Union. That's what's important here. If Boris Johnson and George Eustice truly believe in the union, then they would have no problem with Scotland having a referendum. They would be able to present arguments to support their side, remaining as part of the UK. But they haven't, and they don't seem to be able to do that. Their response is, no, we don't want the Scottish people to have that choice. I think the argument on the independence side really needs to be, why do you want to deny the Scottish people a choice? It's not about independence, it's about having the choice to stay or to leave. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?